Hello there and a very happy new year to you. It is 6 o'clock. I am Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight. Of course, we've all seen the crazy scenes in Venezuela, but let's be frank, we still have no idea whether our government supports the actions that Donald Trump took or not. But it's all right though, because one thing we do know is that he wants us to have stronger ties to the EU, and he's warned his party that trying to oust him would plunge Britain into chaos. Could it be any worse than it is now? You tell me. And trying to avert said chaos, new measures have come into play to strip the not-so-small boat migrants of their mobile phones. OK. And Reform UK have said that under their government, child rapists would have to serve a whole lifetime in prison. What do you think to that? All that and a whole lot more. I want to talk to you about Saturday jobs as well today. Did you have one? Do you miss them? Keeping me company with all of that and a lot more. Former Reform UK spokesman Gwen Towler and Labour MP Barry Gardner. But first up, your latest news headlines.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. Tonight's top story at 6. Venezuela's toppled President Nicolas Maduro has pleaded not guilty in a New York court to charges including drug trafficking and narco-terrorism, insisting, he says, "I am still president." Prosecutors accuse Maduro of overseeing a cocaine smuggling network linked to violent cartels and armed groups across Latin America. Allegations he has long denied. Maduro and his wife were seized from their Caracas compound over the weekend and flown to the United States in what was a dramatic special forces operation ordered by Donald Trump. Well, the unprecedented raid ordered by the president has triggered international backlash, with the UN Security Council debating today the legality of that raid amid fears of regional instability. We now know that Maduro has been ordered to return to court on the 17th of March, while Venezuela prepares to swear in a new leader. Donald Trump has defended his action of raiding Caracas, while the UK, meanwhile, says it's facing pressure to respond. Earlier, our political editor Chris Hope spoke to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
Look, people will take different positions on this, but I think the vast majority of Labour voters and supporters, in fact the vast majority of people across the country, would say the most important thing is that peaceful transition to democracy. It's been years in the waiting, and now we need a period of stabilisation, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that the most important thing is that transition to democracy in Venezuela.
In other news tonight, the Prime Minister has said he stands with Denmark after Donald Trump suggested the United States could annex Greenland. Sir Keir Starmer said Denmark's Prime Minister was right to reject any US claim, insisting Greenland's future is for Greenland and Denmark alone. Mr Trump, though, has argued the territory is vital for US defence, citing its strategic location and mineral wealth. Mr Friedrichsen said that the proposal makes absolutely no sense and the US has no right to the land. Breaking news tonight that the first illegal boat crossing of 2026 has reached the UK, bringing dozens of migrants across the Channel overnight. The journey was made in freezing sub-zero conditions after several other attempted crossings were forced to turn back because of the weather. French authorities treated a number of migrants for hypothermia after those failed attempts. The crossings come as new powers have taken effect today, allowing officers to seize phones and SIM cards from migrants without arrest to gather intelligence on people smugglers. The Home Office says the measures will strengthen enforcement. The critics warn they won't end the small boats crisis. Well, one of those critics, Shadow Immigration Minister Matt Vickers, he told us the policy is just tinkering around the edges.
People who break into this country, who come in illegally, without permission, without the passport, who have no right to be here, should be removed. That's how you solve this. Everybody at home knows it. It's a common sense approach, and we know it works because we tested it when we had that agreement in place with Albania. It was one of the top places from which people were arriving in the country. We stopped those people coming, we removed them straight away, and all of a sudden, 93% less of them were arriving in this country. We need a deterrent, we need it in place. Everything else is tinkering around the edges.
Weather news for you, and snow and ice have shut hundreds of schools and disrupted travel across large parts of the UK as a deep freeze tightens its grip. Yellow weather warnings remain in force across much of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, with forecasters warning of more widespread snow later this week. Sunday night was the coldest of the season so far, with temperatures in Cumbria falling to minus 10.9 degrees. Flights and trains have been cancelled, Eurostar services to the Netherlands suspended, and Liverpool Airport's runway closed. And sport. Two major clubs have sacked their managers amid mounting pressure and poor form. Celtic parted company with Wilfred Nancy after just 33 days in charge. That is the shortest managerial reign in the club's history, following a run of 6 defeats in 8 games. Meanwhile, Manchester United have sacked Ruben Amorim after 14 months in charge, with the club currently 6th in the Premier League. United say that decision was made reluctantly, adding that it was the right time to make a change. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you at 7. Now, though, it is over to Michelle.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you very much for that. Hello, good evening to each and every single one of you. 2026 already. Do you sit there and think, how on earth does this happen? Life just seems to fly by so quickly. I have missed you all. I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas. I hope you had a fantastic New Year's Eve, if that's your kind of thing. If you're someone that just wants to get in bed, pull the quilt over you and close the curtains and forget about it all, I hear you as well. I'm delighted to be back with you. And in the studio with me, I've got Reform UK board member Gawain Towler. Hello.
Hi there.
You've done my... Well, not with me.
Not with you.
Presenting.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to have you.
Looking forward to it.
It's always nice to have Labour MP Barry Gardner. So much, ladies and gents, that we need to talk about. I do want to ask you about Saturday jobs as well. I want you to join the conversations in all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. The reason I'm pondering Saturday jobs today, and don't worry, I'll get to all the big stories in just a second, is that actually the decline of these things is being claimed now at Alan Milburn, the guy that suggested this, is saying that young people are now not equipped for the workplace because these Saturday job experiences don't exist. So I want you to tell me tonight, did you used to have a Saturday job? And if so, what was it? Did you have one?
Yep.
What was it?
Pruning roses.
Pruning roses?
Yeah, basically pruning.
Roses?
At a firm that delivered roses throughout the country. It wasn't going into somebody's garden and pruning roses.
Oh, yeah,
it was going to a rose production company. Then when you had to prune all the roses.
Barry Gardner.
My earliest one was a paper round, but later on, I graduated to clearing people's gardens basically by mowing their lawns.
Oh, well,
Dib.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you as well, it's such a shame that paper rounds no longer exist, because that is the first thing that so many teenagers have to do. And I used to do the free paper. It used to be called the Target, I think it was, and the Advertiser. So every single household got one. They used to weigh a ton, those bags, but it was character building, wasn't it? So
Michelle, I feel I haven't moved on because every new year, I deliver 40,000 calendars to each of my households in the constituency.
What pictures are on your calendar?
I'm still toting around.
So basically, you're Santa.
Pictures of you?
That white beard, big sack.
I wish. No, I do have little helpers.
But what pictures are on the calendar?
Oh, they'd be it's a sort of review of what I've been doing in the year, and then on the inside,
Barry Gardner, do you
you get little chocolates behind each picture.
You give a calendar. Are you telling me you give a calendar to your constituents with 12 pictures of you on it?
No, it's not like that. It's an A3 folded to A4. Right. On the outside, it gives the review of what I've been doing in the year, so they brought up to speed. And on the inside, it's got a calendar with all the sort of local helpline numbers, or how to get in touch with the council or the water company.
Are you in his constituency?
The Samaritans.
Do you hang your calendar with pride? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts on that. Before I move on to the big story, of course, Venezuela Venezuela at the top of the programme. Something stopped me in my tracks that I saw, actually, over the Christmas break. And it starts off as a very sad story, but the reason I'm sharing it with you is it just warmed my cockles as an example of a community coming together. Take a look at this. The story begins with a very, very tragic loss of a little 8-year-old boy. He was called Jamie, and he very, very tragically passed away in his sleep. Now, he was a big lover of motorbikes, huge lover, actually, and a fellow biker went onto social media and he did an appeal to the biker community, if you will, and he asked them to turn out and show their respects to this little boy and to give him one final journey, if you would like, one final school run, and so on and so forth. This was in Warrington on the 23rd of December, and I can't wait to show you the outcome of that. I've just been told in my ear, unfortunately, I can't show you that footage right now, but I will show you before the end of the programme, because honestly, if you are a biker, if you are in that community, oh, here you go. I can show you it as we speak. That's not the image that I'm trying to show you. This is it. So this is the bikers. If you're listening on the radio, you've got to take my word for this. The bikers turned out in their droves. Like, look at this. This is an aerial shot. I've got goosebumps. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of bikers that turned out to pay their respects to this little boy. The family was so touched by this. And I just think, you know what, as we'll progress through the programme, yet again, lots of doom and gloom, lots of conflict, lots of division, you name it. When I see things like this, just so beautiful, and it absolutely touched my heart. So I just want to send all of my love to little Jamie's family. I'm so sorry that this was your experience, but I want to send all my respect as well to the chap Matt that organised that, and to everybody that turned out, especially so close to Christmas. We send you all of our respects. Now, let's move on, of course, to the goings-on in Venezuela. We all know what's gone on. You don't need me to sit and recap with you unless you've been sleeping for the last few days, and I don't blame you, quite frankly. But for me, Barry Gardner, the key question in all of this is, do the Labour Party support what Donald Trump did at the weekend, essentially going into Venezuela and essentially kidnapping the president and frog-marching him out? Do you support that?
Well, look, Michelle, with respect, it's not the key question. The key question,
well, it is for me and my viewers.
The key question now is, what is China going to do with regard to
and that's fascinating.
Taiwan?
I'll come on to China in a minute. Don't worry about that. My question is, get a straight answer. Do the Labour Party support the action of Donald Trump or not?
We should not. The party has yet to pronounce on it effectively.
Why?
In my view. I have no idea.
Do you not think it's a bit pathetic?
I think it makes us complicit. Look, we have a situation now where the world is effectively moving from a system of rules where you respect sovereign states, like Ukraine, you don't just invade them, like Taiwan, you don't just invade them, like Venezuela. Now, do we think that they're ruled by perfect people? No, we don't, right? And nobody's making an apology for Maduro. But the point is, if you believe in the rule of law, you respect the United Nations Charter, which says the sovereignty of the state is inviolable and no foreign power should use military force against it.
But why,
so
as citizens
what we've
of this
done,
country, why do we not understand whether or not our government supports or backs the actions that have been taken? That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for the intricacies, the complexity.
There has been clarity from France, from other countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody else has been clear, and we're mealy-mouthed. And it is interesting. You say nobody supports Maduro. Actually, you see demonstrations in various cities supporting Maduro, and they're all wearing keffirs. It's the same old crowd. The people supporting Maduro are the ones who are supporting Hamas, are the ones who are supporting this, that, and the other. That's who you see out there demonstrating. It's the same people.
Look,
it's that group. And I was surprised by quite how forthright Macron was in support for what Trump did, and I'm somewhat disappointed in the way that we've got.
Absolutely. Look, go in. I think it's appalling that we have a leadership of our country who are so fearful of stepping out of line under Donald Trump.
Fearful of whom?
Well, of Donald Trump.
What, do they think he's going to come in and kidnap Keir from Downing Street?
Not that. I mean, I think we need to take this with the seriousness it deserves. The point is this. What America has done, and they've been very open about it, they've said, we're in the oil business. This is about oil, and we need to understand that actually Exxon used to take 80% of the profits from Venezuelan oil. The Chavez regime that came to power democratically, they then stopped that and took those resources for the Venezuelan people. There was a big court case against Venezuela to do that by Exxon. America's always hated the fact that actually that money is not going back into American coffers. But more than that, what they've hated recently is that that Venezuelan oil that is still coming out is being sold on the international market not in dollars. And you know very
well
being
sold
the
to
importance.
China.
Exactly. It's being sold to China, and they're being paid in renminbi and other currencies. And this is the point. If you take away the petrodollar, the power that everybody in the world has to buy oil and gas with dollars, then, and now it's in rubles and renminbi, what's happening is it undermines the American dollar, it reduces the power of the dollar,
of course,
and that has huge impact on Americans' own.
Don't you think it has a huge impact on China and Russia and the global situation? And would you prefer the global world to be dominated more by the States, which is a democracy, absolutely, or by two countries that aren't? There was a very interesting, in Caracas, there's somebody who was saying, aren't you worried that this is just America trying to get your oil? And he said, what do you think the Chinese want? What do you think the Russians want?
Yes, but they're paying.
This is no big deal. Well, yes, they're paying.
And America isn't. Look,
well, the thing is, and yes, you mentioned that Chavez nationalised Exxon essentially in Venezuela, just like what happened with BP in Iran many, many years ago. But the point is that the money didn't go to the Venezuelan people, did it?
At the beginning it did, actually, and then the Maduro regime came in and the corruption. Look, that's why I say nobody in this country should be supporting Maduro, but what we should do is support international law here. And let me just,
international law seems to exist in its breach.
If you remember that wonderful play, A Man for All Seasons, right? There's a line there where he says, and then when you've cut down all the laws to pursue the devil, and the devil turns on you, where will you hide? Yeah. And we are in the situation where we're ignoring the law. We don't want to offend anybody, so we're ignoring what international law is. And the trouble with that is, once you've done that, then you have no case to bring against Putin. You've got no way of saying to Putin, actually, what you've done is wrong. He just says, well, hang on, your mate Donald Trump has done it and you didn't speak out against him. Why are you speaking out against me? And the same with China. It's a green light to China to go into Taiwan. It's extraordinarily dangerous.
Pause your thoughts, gents, because I want to take you live to the House of Commons. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper speaking on this issue now.
On Venezuela has long been to press for a peaceful transition from authoritarian rule to a democracy which reflects the will of the Venezuelan people and maintains security in the region and is in line with international law. That remains our position and our determined view about what must happen in Venezuela now. And over the weekend, I discussed this with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the UK government is in close contact with our international partners on this issue. The first duty of government is the safety and security of our citizens, and my department is working tirelessly to ensure the safety of British nationals. Over the weekend, I spoke with the UK Chargé d'Affaires in Caracas, and all our embassy staff are safe and accounted for and are working to support the approximately 500 British nationals in Venezuela. Our travel advice currently advises against all travel to Venezuela, and British nationals in Venezuela should closely follow our travel advice, which will be kept up to date. Madam Deputy Speaker, we should be under no illusion as to the nature of the Maduro regime. A once functioning democracy has become a hub for very dangerous organised criminal gangs. Corrupt links involved Iran, with Hezbollah increasingly present in recent years, as well as malign support from Russia. And a regime which has facilitated illicit finance, sanctions evasion and organised criminal activity, including narcotics trafficking and illegal gold trading. That undermines the security of the whole region, including UK overseas territories, as well as the United States and other regional partners. The country has been driven into economic ruin with an 80% drop in their GDP in a decade. Over 8 million people have left, causing instability elsewhere in the region. And we have seen Maduro's regime systematically dismantle democratic institutions, silencing dissent and weaponizing state resources to maintain power through fear and corruption. The International Criminal Court has opened an investigation into possible crimes against humanity following reports of hundreds of extrajudicial killings, including at the hands of Venezuela's security services and paramilitary groups under the regime's command. And UN investigators have repeatedly reported a pattern of arbitrary detentions, tortures and killings. In July 2024 presidential election, millions of Venezuelans voted, but the official results have never been published. The opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, was banned by Maduro from standing. International observers cited basic failures of election integrity, and independent tallies covering 80% of polling stations showed a clear victory for Edmundo Gonzalez, and yet Maduro claimed victory. And most recently in October, the UN independent fact-finding mission reported on state security forces using firearms against protesters after the elections 18 months ago, where 25 people died. Gonzalez has been forced to leave the country and claim political asylum in Spain. Machado was forced into hiding for her own safety and had to be spirited out of the country to receive her Nobel Peace Prize in Norway last month. These are the hallmarks of a regime that clings to power through fear, coercion and violence, not through democratic consent. And that is why, as the Prime Minister said on Saturday, we can shed no tears for the end of Maduro's rule. Let me turn to UK policy. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK has long been an advocate for a democratic Venezuela and a vocal critic of the Maduro regime. Since 2019, successive UK governments have refused to recognise the regime. Through the G7, the UN, with partners and directly, we have continued to call out the Maduro regime and its appalling human rights violations. We have also, in some areas, taken a different policy approach to some of our allies. Our other Five Eyes partners have closed their embassies, but we have maintained our diplomatic mission in Caracas at a much more senior level than many of our partners, and seeking dialogue, sustaining direct contact with the opposition, supporting Venezuelan civil society, and advocating for British interests. A year ago, around Maduro's inauguration, the UK acted alongside partners and announced a wave of new sanctions. We targeted 15 individuals, including judges, senior ranking officials in Maduro's regime, responsible for undermining democracy, the rule of law and human rights violations. And we have imposed sanctions on individuals, but not on sectors of the economy. And we have not supported or been involved in blockades or strikes against drug boats. We have continued to directly promote the interests of the British overseas territories, who need to see stability in the region. And of course, throughout, we have promoted and maintained support for international law. Commitment to international law, as the Prime Minister set out on Saturday, is immensely important to this government. Those principles guide the decisions that we make and the actions we take as part of Britain's foreign policy. That commitment to international law is part of our values, is also strongly in the UK's national interest. And our manifesto talked about a foreign policy that is progressive and that is also realistic, engaging with the world as we find it in the interests of UK security, prosperity and our values. That means upholding international law and defending democracy, and it means confronting the complex, evolving and hybrid threats that we and our allies face in the world today. And those principles and values also guide the conversations that we have with our allies across a range of issues where we agree and disagree. And in my discussions with Secretary Rubio, I raised the importance of complying with international law, and we will continue to urge all partners to do so at every stage. It is, of course, for the US to set out the legal basis for their actions, and the UN Security Council is discussing Venezuela this afternoon. These issues will continue to be matters for international discussion. I discussed with Secretary Rubio what should happen next, and our continued commitment to a transition to a peaceful and stable democracy. Our collective immediate focus must be on avoiding any deterioration in Venezuela into further instability, criminality, repression or violence. That would be deeply damaging for the people of Venezuela, our own overseas territories, our allies, and in the US and other regional partners. The UK has long been clear that the leadership of Venezuela must reflect the will of the Venezuelan people. So the international community must come together to help achieve a peaceful transition to a democratic government that respects the rights and will of its people. That must mean action on the economic crisis, the release of political prisoners, the return of opposition politicians, an end to political repression, respect for human rights, and plans for the holding of free and fair elections. And I urge the acting President, Delcy Rodriguez, to take these steps forward because the people of Venezuela have a right to decide their own future. The US Secretary of State and I discussed the particular role that the UK can play to support a peaceful democratic transition and stability. Because drawing on our embassy in Caracas and on the work that we have done over many years to build up relationships and dialogue with Venezuelan opposition parties and with the current authorities and regime, and of course, our relationship with the US. To that end, I have also spoken today with Venezuelan opposition leader Marina Corina Machado, and her unwavering fight for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Venezuela and against oppression is inspirational, and we will keep in touch over the days and weeks ahead. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me turn briefly to another matter. The House will have seen recent comments from the United States and from Denmark regarding Greenland. Let me be very clear on the UK position. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Our close European partners, our long-standing NATO allies, and all our countries work closely together on security issues and will always do so. The future of Greenland is a matter for the Greenlanders and Danes and no one else. I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like to start by associating myself with the condolences expressed by the Foreign Secretary about the awful tragedy in Crans, Montana. And I also would like to thank her for her statement on Venezuela. Although I am disappointed that it is not the Prime Minister delivering this statement, because many of us in this House and beyond want to know how he is going to respond to this situation. Madam Deputy Speaker, Nicolas Maduro was a tyrant who criminally abused the Venezuelan people and destabilized the region. It is no surprise that there is jubilation on the streets because Venezuelans remember what their country was like before it was ravaged by years of socialist dictatorship. For years, the Conservative government refused to recognize the legitimacy of Maduro's horrific regime of brutality and repression, and we were pleased to see the Labour government follow suit. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are in a fundamentally different world. The truth is that while the likes of China have been strategic and aggressive in strengthening their influence across the world, including South America, the West has been slow. Foreign policy should serve our national interest. It should be about keeping Britain safe. We should be clear-eyed. The United States is our closest security partner. We must work with them seriously, not snipe from the sidelines. We on this side of the House understand why the US has taken this action. As the Foreign Secretary said, UK policy has long been to press for a peaceful transition from authoritarian rule to a democracy. That never happened. Instead, Venezuelans have been living under Maduro's brutal regime for many years. The US has made it clear it is acting in its national interest against drug smuggling and other criminal activity, including potential terrorism. So we understand that. However, we do have concerns about what precedent this sets, especially when there are comments made about the future of Greenland. It is important that the United Kingdom supports its NATO ally, Denmark, which has made it categorically clear that Greenland is not for sale. So I welcome the Foreign Secretary's remarks in that regard. The region and the wider world. It is important that we listen to those who have been risking their lives for freedom and democracy in Venezuela. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, when asked about US action, said that Venezuela had already been invaded by Iran, by Russia, by drug cartels, and Hamas and Hezbollah. It is clear that Venezuela had become a gangster state. I am pleased to hear that the Foreign Secretary has spoken to Maria Machado, but can she also update the House on whether the Prime Minister has spoken to President Trump? And I ask this because the government talks up its relationship with the US, but we keep finding that we are not in the room when big decisions are made. Madam Deputy Speaker, we should be under no illusions. A democratic transition in Venezuela will be far from straightforward. So when the Foreign Secretary speaks of democratic transition, what does that actually mean to the government in practice? And can she also set out what happens to the UK's Venezuela sanctions regime now? In a world changing as it is, we must be serious and responsible about our security and standing. We know what the President of the United States strategy is. His government set out its national security strategy last year. The US is acting in its national interest. We need to do the same. We should be working to protect the rules-based order, and we should be standing up to hostile actors that want to undermine us. But what is our government doing instead? Giving away the Chagos Islands and paying £35 billion for the privilege with no strong legal basis to justify this. Last year, the Defence Committee warned that the UK was not adequately prepared to defend herself from attack. The government is still stalling on defence spending. Conservatives want to see spending increase to 3% of GDP. We want to see spending increase to 3% of GDP by the end of this Parliament, given the changing world. Why has the government not matched that commitment? It has never been more important for the UK to have a coherent foreign policy strategy. Right now, Labour doesn't have one. If they do, we'd like to hear the Foreign Secretary tell us what it is, because I didn't hear anything remotely sounding like that in her statement. Let us be honest, Madam Deputy Speaker. Old strategies will not work. We are living in an increasingly dangerous world.
There you go. You just heard from Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper there describing the position of the UK government or not on the situation in Venezuela, followed promptly by Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. It was quite reassuring, wasn't it, that Yvette Cooper actually started that sentiment by saying that she does actually recognise that the first responsibility for any government is, of course, the British citizen when it comes to the Labour Party. Lots of you will have very strong opinions as to whether or not they actually act like that. But for now, Barry Gardner, your response to what you've just been hearing.
Well, look, I welcome the fact that she said that commitment to international law is tremendously important to this government. She talked about upholding international law, and she said that she'd raised these issues with Marco Rubio. Unfortunately, she did not say that America has violated international law. Now, you don't uphold international law by failing to point out that it has been violated, and that's the key issue here. It is against
that issue. Why?
Well, as I said earlier, I think it's because the UK does not wish to step out of line with the United States. But what it's giving away by doing that is any ability to hold Putin to account, to hold Xi to account, if and when they attack Taiwan. We know these things. You know, Ukraine is on our doorstep. We've seen what happens when the sovereignty of an independent state is violated by a foreign power. And it doesn't matter whether you think they were bad people. They were bad people, but it is for the people of that country to rise up against them, not for somebody else to go and invade them, and particularly not when they use, as Trump has done, the justification for doing it because, quote, we are in the oil business and because it suits your economic benefit to do so. What Kemi Badenoch said about before it was ravaged by a socialist dictatorship, well, her memory is rather too short. She's absolutely right. Maduro was a dictatorship. Chavez was not. That was a democratic election. But before that, that country was ravaged, plundered by the United States, and that's why Chavez
the standard
came
of
to
living
power.
was far higher than it ever was under Chavez or under Maduro.
No,
it has gone down.
Not initially under Chavez. That's not the case. But anyway,
you inherit something, it doesn't initially fall off a cliff. So I'm sorry, that doesn't quite follow. I do think you're making a shibboleth of international law. Now I understand, but you are. The fact is, does President Putin give a hoot? Because if he did, he wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. And Britain saying, we've got international law on our side, doesn't stop a division of tanks. And they don't care. Xi doesn't care for your and for Starmer's love of international law. They don't care. The only thing that stops Xi invading Taiwan is if we effectively defend Taiwan, not with international law and bits of paper, but actually make it impossible for the Chinese to succeed in a hard invasion. So I'm sorry, we're living in a completely different world. We're living in a world of power politics, whether we like it or not. We are.
Gawain, look, I understand what you're saying, and you're right to say that we've moved away from a rules-based international order.
Things I don't think. When did that rules-based international law exist? Did it exist when Reagan invaded Grenada? Did it exist when the French did their actions against the Central African Republic? Did it exist? No, actually, it's a myth. It's a thing that makes us feel warm at night, like a nice 73 tog jumper. It doesn't actually have any serious impact.
The logic of what you're saying is that as long as you are strong enough, you can do what you like, and actually there's no morality to play with this. It doesn't matter what... all that matters is might. And what you're doing
you're
saying
I'm sorry to say, but
right.
I'm sorry to say, but that is how things are in international relations. Always was. Always will be.
So if Hitler had won, that would have been right.
We couldn't have done anything about it, could we?
Well,
we beat Hitler not through international law. We beat him through force of arms.
Yes, of course we did. But what we did that because he invaded. The whole reason we went to war with Hitler was because he'd invaded Czechoslovakia and then Poland.
We were now, after a couple of years, after a couple of years of rearming, we were in a position to do so. And we went to war because it was the right thing to do. I agree. But we went to war with the empire, with the support of a great deal of the world. Right now, we don't have that.
One of the comments that is coming through quite a lot, actually, on both email and on the Your Say It, is nobody cares what the UK thinks in all of this. Why are we pretending that they do?
True, sadly.
Actually, that's not entirely true, Michelle. For all that the UK is no longer the world power that it once was, in international affairs, Britain's voice does still have an impact. When we're round a negotiating table, wherever that is and whatever it's about, actually the voice of Britain is listened to, and usually it's listened to with respect. And the reason it's listened to with respect is because we recognise the rights not only of the strong, but of those who are not the three strongest powers.
Such as the people of the Chagos. Oh, no, OK. The weak, like that, we don't recognise.
You are embarked on a complete diversion here.
Well, no, you said we recognise the rights of the weak, such as the people of the Chagos.
The rights of the weak are in international law. It is absolutely clear, and it's been in the 21
self-determination,
in the
stuff of that sort.
21 and 22 court cases that came about. It was clear that in international law, Mauritius actually had the right to the Chagos, and the reason for that, if I can just complete, the reason for that was because we had arbitrarily taken off the Chagosian Islands from Mauritius when it was all under colonial control.
They were arbitrarily put together because they were closer to each other than they were to London. They were arbitrarily put together.
In international law, in the court, it was found that Mauritius did actually have the right.
It wasn't found in any serious court.
I'm sorry, it was, but anyway, this is a sideshow, because the really important issue is, do we stand for something in this country? Do we believe that might is right, or do we simply say, no, there are rules by which people ought to operate, and they are based in the international rules-based order, and that is on a moral ground.
By whom?
People at home, some people at home anyway, will be shouting, you can have all your rules-based order that you like, but when the guy at the top of the tree making the rules decides that said rules have changed, then everyone else will literally have to follow. It's as simple as that. Many people will be shouting.
But we didn't with Putin. We didn't do that with Putin. When Putin at the top of the tree said, "Oh well, I'm just going to go into Ukraine," what did we say? We said
different when it comes to Donald Trump.
But you've just made the point beautifully. We discriminate simply on the point of whether we feel that person's on our side or not. That's
so
not.
Weak government,
that is hypocrisy.
Is it,
that's not diplomacy. It's hypocrisy.
We have a weak government in this country, because the bit that I cannot fathom, I started my programme with it and we'll end this segment with it as well. I cannot understand why still, I mean, what time is it now? 20 to 7. We've had now the Foreign Secretary giving statements. We've had statements at the UN Security Council. We've had relentless interviews with Keir Starmer about this stuff. We still do not know whether or not our government supports the actions of Donald Trump. I'm none the wiser.
I think it's very clear they do.
None the wiser.
No. Look, it's very clear. They have refused to condemn what they know they ought to condemn, and therefore they're,
because they're weak. Because they're weak. They don't have the chops to stand up and say, in this occasion,
Wilson opposed Vietnam.
You say they're weak.
Yes.
But on the one hand, you're criticising them for not standing up, and yet when I say they should stand up, you criticise me for it.
No, I'm not criticising you for that. I'm criticising the government.
But you disagree.
For being utterly pathetic to stand up and actually state clearly what their position is. The citizens of this country, the viewers of this programme, the listeners of this programme, they have a right to understand on the most basic level, what does our Prime Minister and our government think to the actions that have gone on? We don't know. We have to read between the lines. We have to guess. The reality of it is many people will perceive this government as being utterly cowardly. After the break, I want to come back to that point that Yvette Cooper made at the start of her statement in the House just there, where she was clearly making the point, and I think it's a bit rich actually, to stand there and make the point that the first responsibility of any government is to its citizens. If this Labour Party government thinks that way, then why on earth did we just have 41,500 not so small boat migrants coming into this country, and why now are we sitting here today, as we will talk about in a second, talking about tinkering around the edges of trying to nick SIM cards and smartphones off these people? What are we doing in this country? I'll see you in a minute. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GBNews family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, Gawain Towler and Barry Gardner. With you till 7, Helen has been in touch and says, Michelle, can I tell you what makes me laugh? And Helen, I'm reading this out because so many people have got in touch with a similar comment to you. You say, watching Yvette Cooper in the Commons just then, banging on about a lack of democracy and freedom of speech in Venezuela, talking about dictatorships and democracy, while simultaneously here in this country being busy cancelling local elections and essentially, she says, putting people in prison for having an opinion that they do not like. That sentiment, I can tell you, was echoed among a lot of you at home tonight. The bit that stuck out for me, aside from Venezuela, because quite frankly, we've got enough of our own problems in this country, Yvette Cooper, she started that speech of the Commons there, acknowledging and vocalising that the first responsibility of any government is to its own citizens. Now, I've put this to you, Barry Gardner. I don't believe that your government takes its first responsibility seriously. We've discussed and debated this at length previously. I remember the case of yet again another teenage girl who had been sexually assaulted and raped by yet another not-so-small boat migrant. Now, we heard over the Christmas period that the 2025 numbers were in, 41,500 not-so-small boat migrants in
Second highest ever.
Yeah, 13% up on the year before. This is going in the wrong direction now. Today, what's happened now is it's come into effect that the latest brainwave from the Labour Party is seizing SIM cards / smartphones. Are you guys having a laugh? Do you seriously think this is going to stop these crossings?
No, look, and I've said it to you before, there isn't one single thing that is going to stop these crossings. What the government's trying to do is to take the powers it needs in order to piece by piece put together a strategy that will stop them. And obviously, having the intelligence that is contained on those smartphones would be helpful, and other countries have done that. They've confiscated smartphones when asylum seekers have come over and migrants have come over, in order to be able to spot the illegal gangs, track it back and take action. So it's part of a whole suite of measures that's required. It's not a silver bullet in itself. Nobody's fooling themselves to think it is.
I mean, I would say, one, the stuff that we've been talking about that's been announced today is frankly silly. It's not like minor tweaking details. Basically, it's not the people in our detention camps, it's not the people in our HMOs, it's not the people in our hotels who are buying boats and buying engines for boats. It's the people in France. And so, therefore, getting those phones at this side is frankly irrelevant. And you say there's not one silver bullet. There is a sort of silver bullet. Make it absolutely clear that anybody who arrives on our shores illegally, without permission, before they come here, will be deported. Period. They will never receive right to remain. They will never, because they've arrived in a legal fashion. If you have that as the policy, detain, deport, nobody ever gets, if they come illegally, gets right to remain.
Yes, but
that will stop them.
Well, of course, if that were possible, that would potentially be right. And you will know that actually the government has been taking steps with a number of countries to ensure that we can deport successfully with Albania, not successfully with a number of other countries. And what we need to do is we need to have those arrangements with other countries, and that's why the government has said that it will threaten to cut off support for those countries in terms of their visas coming over here unless they comply.
And other things of that sort.
Oh, exactly.
And trade. So basically, if you don't take your people back, then we will basically...
So simply saying it doesn't achieve it, because the countries can refuse to do so, or they can say, well, we haven't got the evidence that they're from our country. So, you know, and you can't just dump people in the middle of the ocean.
I mean, there are ways and means of doing this. It's like testing somebody's age. We don't do that. There are actually very simple tests to check somebody's age, but we don't do it because it's invasive. Not even that invasive. You can do it from swab tests and things of this sort. You can check somebody's DNA.
So what if it's invasive? This is what I've not understood about this country.
If you want to know where somebody's from...
Wait, hold on. If you want to put a potential grown man in a classroom with young children, then quite frankly, I don't really care how invasive you need to be in order to verify and check that that grown man is a child or not.
I 100% agree. And when it comes to where they're from, it isn't that invasive. It's just a swab test. If you and I spend 60 quid on ancestry, DNA, whatever testing, we can be told exactly where our DNA is from. You do that...
But it won't tell you look, I understand what you're saying.
It's keeping much more specific.
What it won't tell you is what your citizenship is. And you know that. It may tell you your ethnicity and historically, which part of the world you come from, but it won't tell you your citizenship. It may tell you that you're North African, it may tell you that you're from the Indian subcontinent, but it won't actually tell you what your citizenship is. That's the problem with things like that. But look, you know, when you say there is a simple solution and it's send them back, my point is, you have to have the cooperation of the country to which you are sending them. And without that, it's not the simple solution that you're putting forward.
It's not straight-line simplicity. But if you detain, not put into an HMO, not put into a hotel. I know they're cutting a number of hotels, and then they're going to HMOs instead. But if you detain in a secure facility, not in a former RAF base where there are no fences, but in a secure facility, and make it clear that you're not getting out of that and never going to, because you've come in illegally, those boat numbers will drop and drop fast.
Yeah, I've got to say, I don't...
And in the end, they will want to go home because they've got nothing for them, because all they've got is a tin hut.
Why don't we have that policy which makes it clear to people, if you enter this country by this means, i.e. you breach the borders and all the rest of it, you just won't be considered for asylum, full stop? Why don't we have that?
Because...
international rule of law?
We actually created the international legislation, the Dublin Convention, and otherwise there would be no way anyone could ever claim asylum in the UK. Well, no. Because actually you can't come here by a plane. You have to be able to show that you've got the visa, the appropriate documentation. So the only way of coming is across the channel, either by train or by
what did people, when people wished to come here as asylum seekers, as refugees, say 15, 20 years ago, how did they do it then?
What they did...
Yes, they didn't come by boats, did they?
They came under lorries.
Well, 15, 20 years ago, even the lorry route was very rare.
But if people were claiming asylum, in those days, you could have international air travel without showing that you had the documentation. That's been very recent. That has been in the past decade, that's come into force.
Why?
The airlines doing those strictures.
I was thinking about this over Christmas, what a life I have. And I was thinking, why don't we cooperate with the French? Because surely the French want to stop this, because if all these people coming to France to get through to here, surely it's not in France's best interest. So why don't we cut a deal with the French and say, look, we're going to work together to push these boats back to you. Once we achieve that and we push the... Because all of you guys, you included, you're all talking about when they get here, let's do this, let's do that, detain here, whatever. What I would argue, my viewers would argue, is the key to all of this is to stop them arriving here in the first place. So if you coordinated with France, you said to them, right, we're going to push these boats back with your cooperation, and literally almost overnight, these people will stop surging in on France and Calais, they'll stop getting on these boats, problem solved. Why can't we do that?
It sounds very, very simple.
But why can't
the reason that it doesn't work is because these people have come and they come into France from all other parts of...
But they're going via France to the UK. They wouldn't be doing that if you knew that you couldn't...
They wouldn't be coming to the UK, but they would still be seeking to get either asylum, if they're genuine asylum seekers, or if they're economic migrants, a better economic position. So they're still coming into Europe. Now, then
you've got the borderless Europe, which
exactly
is a mess.
And so the French know that they couldn't then control the situation.
Well, they could, part of the problem, when we've had, and I take your point, I do take your point.
You'll have to take his point very quickly, because it's almost time for me to say farewell. I've got to say, I have suspicions about the whole situation in France. Did you see the other day that they were talking about potentially arresting what they called the vigilantes, those British guys that have gone over to the shores, taking matters into their own hands and slashing the boats to prevent those crossings? Some would argue that actually the French police should be looking at those fellas and offering them a job rather than offering them to get into prison. They seem to be doing a damn fine better job than some of these French police that we taxpayers are paying a small fortune to, by the way. Talking about being the first responsibility of a government to keep the British citizens safe, we didn't even get a chance to talk about that ridiculousness of that Egyptian British guy that they've let back in as a top priority that hates this country. Goodness me, what a mess. Thanks, gents. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It will turn milder slowly through the latter half of this week, but the cold spell continues for now. Hard frost, a continued ice risk, and yes, further snow in places. That said, the snow showers in eastern England from today are fading overnight, but it could still be very icy here. Still a few flurries coming into parts of Wales, southwest England, and we will continue with a snowy risk over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but complicated by some rain edging in here at the same time. Wherever we've had snow or rain falling, it could be icy as temperatures tumble down to -3, -4. That's towns and cities. Rural spots could, where there's snow lying on the ground, get to minus double figures. Now, it won't be as cold tonight across Scotland as last night because we've got more clouds spilling in. That's producing that mixture of rain, sleet and some snow, which could still be heavy, particularly over northern Scotland. Could be a slippery start for Northern Ireland and for southern Scotland.